listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifester Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I awakened with wolves. When I met a wolf, it talked to me just like I'm talking now, and the wolves taught me to read the energy of the heart. And I can intuitively hear plants, animals, and people as a result. I became an intuitive writer, intuitive healer and writer as a result. I do readings, I do classes, and you can find me at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. Let me tell you about today's guest, Shellie Enteen, an author of a Priestess trilogy. A born communicator, Shellie Enteen is an astrologer, registered aromatherapist, educator, published author, poet, and inspirational speaker. She feels blessed that her path has included the study of several spiritual philosophies, including those taught by generous Native American teachers. They provided her with a deep sense of honoring all the kingdoms of nature. Raised in New York City, she currently lives in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in South Carolina, where the peace, beauty, and wise visitors from the elemental world have greatly inspired her creative and spiritual work. If you're not familiar with elementals, we will talk about this later on in the interview. Shellie provides astrological readings, custom essential oils, and Bach flower consultations, Reiki and Jin Shin Jiu-Jitsu, energy healing, and teaches workshops in astrology, aromatherapy, energy work, and more. So let's go ahead. Welcome, Shellie. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Good. Well, she's written this cool trilogy, and it starts with a priestess. I believe you pronounce her name Anwen.
You can say it that way. Yeah.
How do you say it?
Anwen. I just
Anwen.
do an ah because of the sound.
Right. Because of the heart sound. Yeah.
Yes.
So it relates her story as the Druid system is beginning to sort of be overcome by Christianity. And for those of you who don't know about it, many of the churches and many of the things, they were built on top of where the Druids worshipped. So it's really quite interesting the way that those cultures sort of merged. But they did undo a lot of the power of the Druids. And she goes back and she tells us about this. And there's also the Arthurian legend is sort of mixed in this, as is Merlin. And she's the last priestess, I believe, that's called to serve. Is that correct?
Well, you had teaching centers back then, and it was a circle of 9 priestesses. And you would be there and pretty much staggered in age, but at the time that they were starting to have to disappear from view, she is the last one that will come to the island for the first time. She's the last arrival. So she gets her training and then she does her mission.
And it took you what, did you say 20 years to write the trilogy?
It was not a thought of mine to do this. It was given to me to do it. And I was extremely busy in my work with aromatherapy, body work, teaching, traveling. So every now and then I would check in on it, and get a little bit more. So,
Hmm.
but it wasn't until I went to Wales in 2013. So I got the assignment at the end of 1999, and I wrote the first words in January of 2000. I opened up and she spoke, not that I heard, but she was giving me that. And so when I finally got to Wales, I was in the hologram, which I guess you know what the hologram means, but
Yes.
if your listeners don't, it's time all happening at once in a certain place. I got to go to the coastline and to the Llŷn Peninsula, which was also where Dr. Bach was born and developed his Bach flowers, everything. All these little pieces come together, eventually. And I was taken to a place where I could see the island, the Priestess Isle. And nobody was standing on the cliff with me. And I was looking at this island that has a tor and a flat area and was mist covered on the bottom, just like, people who've read Mist of Avalon, and I was suddenly doing an invocation. It doesn't happen to me often, but when it does, it comes through very powerfully. And it was about the elements. And I was like, wow, so I picked up a stone that said I could take it. And when I was going to write, I had gotten her to the aisle and I would hold it for a little while, the stone, and then I would just take down what she says. And most of that is in book 2.
And this is the unseen guide that you're referring to in your notes at the end of the book, or is this a different guide?
Well, I think I'm not sure exactly what the sentence is that you're referring to. So Anwen is an unseen guide for me.
Right.
Yes, it's just, um, I found that I am what I call muse driven as a writer, no matter what, poetry, whatever. Usually I'm just downloading something, it's, and I like that, but writers will tell you there are 2 kinds of writers. One is the one that makes the story, knows what's going to happen, everything is set in place, and then there's the ones that just listen for the right thing to say, and that's me. That's been me, unless I'm doing nonfiction, then it's different,
I think I have both of those. I did want to go back and explain a hologram. So you've probably heard me on other shows talking about places where you can time travel in certain places. Well, you get images in those places. And the holograms or what you see feel so real. It's like you're actually there. Or if I'm doing a reading for someone, I can see them. I can see the room that they're in. I can see what their life looks like. Now I'm receiving that energetically. It doesn't look exactly like it would in reality, but it's close. And so if you want to go for a person who hasn't experienced this, let's take an event in your childhood, good or bad. You have images of it, you have feelings about it, you have thoughts about it, and you have sensations about it. So that memory is actually a hologram. It's not happening now, but you can step into that hologram anytime you want.
Yeah. The first time I stepped into the hologram was when the stranger on the train who gave me the assignment in 1999,
Mm.
my reluctant willingness, I went to Caerleon in Wales. I was in England for an astrology, actually, an astrology workshop. And I went out west to the friend in Glastonbury, and we went across to Caerleon, which the stranger on the train had said was where Arthur was. That was Camelot. And it was really, completely mind-blowing to me, Wales, it was not very well known. And I think it's very much on purpose that they were hiding Wales quite a bit And it's just the veil has just started lifting around the time I went in 2013. Yeah.
I thought when you were writing this that you had had a past life there as a priestess.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me
Hmm.
because it was easy, or that I would be chosen because I could connect to what she
Right.
was saying. I've also had an interesting person. I'll give you information about her in case you ever want to interview her. She lives in New South Wales and she's a young woman and she reads ancestry. So I very recently, only about a month or so ago, discovered that I'm on a bloodline with my muse. So
Hmm.
that makes it even easier because she tells you right in the opening when she's starting in that you will know this story is true because it's your own. It's a memory reawakening in the crystals of your bones. And that is where our ancestors are. I mean, their wisdom is there. So this is exactly what happens. You have the Celtic ancestry. You're going to be able to bring in the Celtic ancestors. While you're reading, you will awaken. And also, I have found it doesn't have to be Celtic. It can be any, because I get, people who've read the books. They come from, I thought I had a demographic, but it really applies to, I mean, anyone, we've all come from indigenous cultures
Hmm.
that were in harmony with the land and had their ways. So
Yeah.
anyone actually to,
So tell us, okay, I was going to ask you, one of the interesting things to me is that I've noticed that I looked this up to see, but it said that your story is based in Wales, but King Arthur's associated with Scotland, Wales, Northumberland, and Cornwall. So how did you decide to use Wales? Was it because of the feeling you had?
well, I'll tell you, this is a really interesting thing about the Arthur legend. Okay.
Hmm.
And as you read the book, if you go through all three books, you'll know exactly why. But what I will say is that Arthur traveled in his adult business as being a warrior, chieftain,
Hmm.
and he did something that's almost like what Hiawatha did for the northern tribes which are now lumped together called Iroquois, people of the
Hmm.
Roundhouse. Well, they were gathering warriors to fend off the Anglo-Saxon. And so he has been around. I mean, when he was born, there was a comet in the sky, which was not a good thing in those days. So they took him immediately away from where he was because they knew he was going to be this person he became. And they fostered him in Cornwall with his uncle.
Hmm.
So yes, he was in Cornwall. And yes, he went to England to have his ceremony at the Stonehenge.
Hmm.
So yes, he was in England, and yes, he went up to the northern tribes, and it was one of the first times that the blue painted warriors fought with the Welsh. So again, in his own lifetime, he was a legend.
Right.
Where he came from was the southeast coast of Wales, where there's the most fierce warrior tribe, the Silures. That's where they were. And they were really, under the dominion of Rome for a while, but they couldn't really overcome them and overpower them. And even, you know the word Pendragon,
Right.
right? Well, that isn't a surname, as most people think Uther Pendragon was his father. No. Uther is Welsh, and it means the highest and the most fierce of the Pendragons, pen of the warriors. It's a title. Everybody didn't get to be the Uther Pendragon. Only one person could be the Uther. And there was a line of Uther Pendragons that came from that tribe. And they were, different tribes at the time. They all spoke the same language. A lot of people spoke the language that the Welsh still speak before way back. And so I'm very aware of the words, like Merlin's name comes from a Welsh word that is Myrddin, Myrddin, but it's anglicized. I mean, we speak English, so we have anglicized versions, right? And then you go for a long time where there's absolutely no written anything. And the
I
Druids,
was going to get to that. I was going to say one of the things that you put on Facebook that really intrigued me is that you were writing about the Welsh Mysteries last fall and how they were never written in words, but passed down perhaps intuitively and through stories, and that they concerned a lot of deep mysteries. Tell us more about that.
okay, people must realize, especially if you have these ancestors, that these were very learned people. The Druid priests studied, and the bards studied for 30 years to get the songs and the tellings exactly the same. Now, the reason that they did this was interesting. If you think about it, you have a favorite song that somebody sings, and you always have, like say, you go back to your teens, and you probably know all the lyrics still from that song, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody sang the song with different words, you'd be, wait a minute, that's not right. It would be an instinctive response. So the brilliance of doing this is that these people would hear the songs and the stories and the teachings in mainly at festival times, or, perhaps if you were royal, you would have them come and teach your children. But if somebody tried to distort these teachings and these stories, it would be instantly recognized. Whereas, as we know, if you write things down, I mean, we look at the King James Version of the Bible, for instance, as we write things down, it changes.
It changes a lot. Yeah.
And so that's exactly why they did it. It wasn't that they didn't know how to write. It wasn't that they couldn't do it differently. It was that they chose. And the reason was that they knew they were going to have to disappear. Also, that was another thing at the time of the book that I wrote.
So
And
they had pre-knowledge that they would have to make their
I mean, just like the Native American medicine men had pre-knowledge.
right. That it
We
didn't
don't know
matter.
why they're letting them take over because look what they're
Mhm.
going to do, but they're going to.
Right.
So they had that understanding. And actually, I knew absolutely nothing about any of this when I started writing. So this all came to me. Anything I know about this that I'm saying came through the writing and was later validated for me. So even when she said to me, I was born on Midsummer's Day in 479, and they called it AD, now it's CE.
Right.
I was like, well, I wonder what was going on then. It's like a mystery to me. Well, when she does pass away, it's only maybe 20 years before the edict came from Rome that there could be no other church. Everybody had to agree to follow the Pope in Rome. So she is right at that crucial turning point. And I had no idea that that was true until all was said and done. And I fact checked later, so I wouldn't be an imposter. And the thing is, everything she told me, I mean, this is really quite an interesting journey for me, that everything she said, whether she told me she was smelling a sweet peat fire on the island, which I had not, I checked and found out, yeah, that's what they would be burning, and that's how it smells. So, the reason that they had to get it completely delivered in a different way other than words was because once the edict came, their Celtic energy, which they allowed them to mingle at first, Celtic Christian church, was going to be gone. And of course, we know that the Roman Church, is what I call it, appropriated the holiday festivals like Christmas. They made
Right.
it something
Yeah,
different.
they took all the pagan dates and pasted Christian dates on top of
And
it.
they changed the scenario, they changed the
Mhm.
story, they changed the focus. So they knew they would do that. So they weren't going to, and the bards went on, by the way. They were one of the least threatening, and the royals liked them because they would sing tribute songs to the family line, So,
Well, that was wise.
well, but they were very flattering. And,
Hmm.
and also it was entertainment, but they were not singing the old songs.
Hmm.
Even what we do have, the Mabinogion, the mythology of Wales, and the goddesses of the Mabinogion, like Rhiannon and Branwen, that was written in Christianized Wales they think it's the 12th century. So she's at the late 5th century.
Right.
That's the first time we get them writing. So really, I studied with someone who was a history and mythology professor, Welsh history. And he's the one who told me that. We just don't know. If they had goddesses, they probably did. We don't know the names.
Hmm.
So the name Rhiannon, and the stories that we know, like the Cistercian monks wrote for Eleanor of Aquitaine, that whole romantic
What
triangle.
a story. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Eleanor of Aquitaine, it was a new fad, courtly romance, and all of that, the knights and everything. That was, like 700 years after
Hmm.
Arthur the warrior kept Wales from being taken by the Anglo-Saxons, and Cornwall also. And so he also fought a battle in Cornwall. So every place he was and every place his lineage would go would have stories, folk
Hmm.
tales. And then, we come to this point where she's saying, I'll tell you. I mean, they called her Nimue, and she was evil,
Right.
called her Vivienne and the Lady of the Lake. And she says, none
Hmm.
of these were my name.
Yeah, I remember all of that. So, why don't you tell us about a few of the changes that you made with the characters of Merlin and Arthur?
The changes I made.
Well, you
Oh,
kind of
okay. Well,
changed the
no.
story and the character a
Okay.
bit.
All right. What happened was, as I was writing her birth scene, and a week later, her mother is like holding her up in the light to see the sunset. And when she turns back into the room, there's a man standing there. And when I wrote that, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a danger scene, like there was a man standing in the room. But she says hello to Merlin. And she starts describing him. And, everybody sees him as like this old guy with the long,
Right.
stripy white beard. And, eventually he became that because he was very long lived for the time. But at the time that she was born, he was like a pretty good looking
He
30.
was sexy. He was hot.
He was all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But but he was a Druid priest, so he wasn't running around, you know, sowing his seeds everywhere. But yeah, and that is a kind of a controversial moment because when they do partner, she is 20 years younger than him. And so he's 33, she's 13. And in our society, 13 is a child.
Right.
But in those days, it was not a child. And she does tell us this right in the beginning. She says, the minute we had our moon cycle, we were women. And one of the things I loved was that she talked about the age of 10. There's a beautiful scene where she goes for an initiation because she turned 10 years old. And this is like a between time. And they honored that. You're not an adult yet, but you're no longer a child.
Hmm.
So they have a special ceremony for you. And then you are given new tasks and they start to prepare you for when you get your moon, because you could get your moon, you know how it was.
Yeah.
We know everybody
Yeah.
didn't get it the same year on the same day, you know, so they were just giving them that preparation.
Well, Merlin may not have been promiscuous, but there was definitely plenty of sex between psychic gifted people, I would say.
I would say if I could meet Merlin, I would be the happiest woman in the world. Because to me, as the character he is, and the way he's preparing her, again, once you get through the other books, and if you go back and
Yeah.
read them again, I mean, his preparation for her journey. I mean, he's so gentle and giving her such profound teachings, but very spacious. I just found him, yeah, quite a character, much more powerful to me than the other representations of the
I
wizard.
agree. I thought Arthur was a little weaker character from how I might have seen him in the past, especially
Well,
as a young man.
well, Arthur had a different mission.
Hmm.
And I don't really want to say, I don't want to give away all the,
No.
you know, all the deal, because I didn't know when I was writing it, you know. But it was very important what he did and his personality. And I do say this in the beginning. She says that even the character of Arthur, the golden one, they call him the golden one, and you know why, but
Mhm.
everybody else doesn't know why, is not shown the spiritual power that he had. It was a spiritual power and, you know, an incredible personality.
Right.
So, you know, you loved him the minute you met him. You know, he's one of
Right.
those
He was
people.
charismatic.
Yes. And
Mhm.
how could he bring together an army from all over? Who would follow? Who would they follow?
Right.
So it's really, it makes sense, but they're closer in age. And, you know, so their interactions are quite different.
Hmm.
An interaction with a learned, wise. Yes, I agree. I agree
Hmm.
with you, but I know the reasons for it.
I know. We know you should go read the book if you
You
really
should read
want to know.
it. You'll love it.
So then one more question on this topic. I know in Mist of Avalon, the priestesses were free to choose who they had sex with and who they didn't have it with. It seems like it was a bit predetermined or decided by the main priestess, Gwendolyn, in the book.
In that way, you're talking about the young students,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So they're going through their own issues. The ones that have issues are learning,
Right.
right? So she doesn't tell other people in the book, like you can't sleep with anyone or you can't sleep with this one, but
Right.
maybe not now, she says to one of them in one instant, right?
Right. And then they're young men that they're supposed to sleep with as well.
Okay, so that is a really fascinating thing because that was in every culture that had priestesses had
Right.
initiations for the young men. Why? This is the key, is why. The male and female were considered equals in ancient societies. They may have worshipped goddesses, but they also worshipped the god. You know, the solar festivals
Hmm.
are for the sun. And it isn't really, I think they're just personifications of the principles
Right.
of dynamic and magnetic.
I should probably say this goes back to Romans, Greeks, and who knows how much further back
You
that
know,
goes.
really. And it may not have been every fellow in the village, but certainly the ones that were of a royal status. Instead of just letting them learn what to do with a woman on their own and end up not being able to connect to the honoring in
Right.
that situation, at a certain point, a priestess was chosen to teach. It was a
Right.
teacher.
Yeah, I was
Mm.
just curious about it. Just a question.
Well,
So
it's great. It's a great question.
we're coming to break. I'm Julia Griffin, and I've been talking with Shellie Enteen about her Priestess trilogy, which is based on the Arthurian legend. We've been talking about sex, holograms, Merlin, Arthur, all kinds of things that were going on around 400 AD. So if you're interested in magic and the past, then come back. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin from OneTrueSelf.com, and I'm talking with Shellie Enteen about her Priestess trilogy based on around 400, and it's based on the Arthurian legend, the rituals that were used by priestesses, and it involves whales. It's a very interesting story. So, Shellie, tell us about the Circle of Nine and the island, because I thought that was a particularly interesting part of the book.
Yes. Well, again, there were these centers. People know about Avalon as the Glastonbury Tor area. That is, but the priestesses were healers. These were the ones you wanted to have nearby, or
Mhm.
like not far away, so they could get somewhere. They were midwives. They had a lot of knowledge about the body and how it would be healed, and also certain ways. So wherever you had a healing spring or a well, a circle of nine would be nearby, let's say. So Glastonbury Tor had a circle of nine. And you see that circle in the book also.
Right.
I was very concerned about Mists of Avalon devotees because, I was glad that they visit there. So, but the truth is they were all over the place and there were healing centers.
Mhm.
And the nine, the energy of the nine is very interesting. And the reason that there are in the new myth, there are 9 pearls on the cauldron of Ceridwen. That's the inspiration of the Awen. That's the wisdom that comes. It has to do with something that we experience on Earth all the time, and we're in one of the 8 cycles right now. This is the festival that I call the First Harvest Festival because we didn't know the name from Wales, but it's Luniasid or Lammas, and this is the harvest of the grains, right? So when you look at the wheel and you look at the division of the wheel into the solstices, we have the solstices and we have the equinoxes, and then we have points, midpoints between them that create the 8. We have 8 cycles of the moon also every month. It goes through 8. The 9th energy is the mystery of the moment when the end becomes the beginning.
Mm.
So we have a new moon in Leo coming now,
On the
as we're
4th. Yeah.
speaking on the 4th. And so at some point, it stops being the end
Mhm.
and it starts being. And the powerpoint of the mystery is 9. Okay. So we have that cycle also when we look at numerological, we
Right.
go up to a 9. So this is the reason that the head priestess is the 9. Okay. And so because she's the one that holds the mysteries for everyone.
Mhm. Right.
And she's another character that comes in book 1, gives her the first initiation, and then greets her on the island. And I mean, she is a tremendous teacher. In fact, I'm starting to get little pieces from her. I might even do it. I don't think it'll be as big, but I think there's a prequel about
Right.
her on her own.
Okay, so another question I wanted to ask you is in the second book, you share the chakra sounds, which have been attributed to many philosophical systems. And you also use them as a tool for healing. I wondered if you would actually say those sounds for our listeners so they could use them.
Uh-oh.
Mhm.
Well, the is like, the lowest chakra. And then you have the U, and then the O, and the ah, which
Mhm.
makes sense, the heart, the ah, and lungs as well. And then you have, this is where I get confused because in her book it's a little different, I think.
Mhm.
There's the ah goes to the I, A, E.
Right.
So that I believe is correct. So each of those carries that energy. And in the ancient languages, we don't have this now, but the ancient languages were based on those sounds
Mhm.
because the centers had meaning. They knew that they had meaning. So when you asked me, how do I pronounce the name of the character? And I said, Anwain is really the way the Welsh word pronounces. The W is a
Mhm.
U sometimes, mostly. And the E is an A. So she has an an A, and she has an U.
Right.
So she's got those chakras.
I know that the wolves tell me that in the beginning, all words were powerful. If you made any kind of sound, something would happen.
Right.
You could call things to you, you could make something materialize, you could change the weather, and we've lost all of that. I used to do these sounds. I think I can do one so they can hear it. This is when you practice them over and over and over, like ooh would be oh, like a vibration that comes out with those.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Mhm.
Because, in fact, I tell myself sometimes that I should be running them all every day, a couple of times, and to help bring the
Yeah.
vibrational balance in.
Well, it does really help because when I saw them in your book, I decided I would teach it in an ongoing class. And I was like,
Awesome.
oh no, all my tones are off. So it's taken like 3 weeks of practicing to get it to vibrate correctly with the chakras because, if you hit the right sound, you can feel the vibration.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's,
Jonathan Goldberg teaches those if anyone wants to go and try and look for them.
yeah. Yeah, he has a 7-minute chakra thing or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. I mean, I really, again, like I didn't know she was going to get training in the elements. I didn't know she was going to get, but I think that they all had it, definitely.
Hmm.
And the telepathic, which came before the words.
Oh, definitely. And I think too, we should add for people who want to manifest something, doing these vowel sounds 3 or 4 times before you start focusing on something is really powerful. But let's move on to the elements and the elementals because I don't think that a lot of people know about that. So we have fire, which is sometimes salamanders or dragons. Fire is will, power, success. Sylphs, which is the air element. That's ease and contentment, the way we communicate telepathically. That's sylphs. Undines, which are emotions because they're water beings or mermaids. And that's the right emotion, the right sensation in the middle of the body. And the earth is gnomes, which is vitality and strength and being grounded. So I know you have a lot to add to that. So I was going to say, tell me your training and perceptions with those.
It's interesting because before I wrote her training, I had been doing classes on elements, and I thought I knew everything there was to know.
Oh, no, you won't. You can never know
Until the
everything on
danger,
any
isn't
subject.
it? You're right. The
Mhm.
danger of thinking that is there. So when she goes into her first training, I learned a great deal about how to work with the feelings of water, how to be present with the energy of water. And there's particularly one teaching that he really kind of gives her at the end about sharing water. That was so profound. I was like, wow, if I had only known that, I would have been a little more careful. Because, we have a communion cup,
Right.
right? But do we realize that as we pass the cup around, we're taking in energy from each person that drank before us? I don't think so.
Oh
I
no, I knew that when I was 12 and I went to an Episcopal church. I could just like feel it flood through me. I wanted to leave. And my
see.
friend that I went with, I kept squeezing her hand and she said, "Did it make you feel religious?" I said, "No, it made me want to go for so many people to drink out of the same cup."
Right. See, that's your gift. You have that gift. So would you say you feel like water element is your biggest element?
I
Is it
I
both?
am one of these people who had very deep emotional experiences as a child. And through working through that, I think that the water element helps me a lot. And I'm very aware of it because of having to, well, if you're a psychic and you get upset, things break and fall out of cabinets and things like that. So you really don't have much choice about coming to terms with it. Let's put it that way.
Right. Get the waters still. Bring the waves to rest.
Right.
I learned that I am air,
Hmm.
and it's not my zodiac. It doesn't
It
show.
doesn't have to be.
Right. It doesn't have to be, but the thing that I really loved about the focus on the air, and there's like a lot of different tools and things that you get in the book, so we're only touching the surface here, was the fact that it is the unseen realm, and all the things of it. And my main thing as an astrologer was I had started getting the sense that they really messed us up with the sign of Aquarius. I think maybe they did it on purpose, because that is one of the most powerful signs for the individuality of the person that you are. And again, it's the bringing in, that they have a man with water pouring out of
Hmm.
a jug, which, you kind of know that can't really keep going.
No. And
You're
plus, the
on,
man is up in the stars.
yeah, he's up in the stars, but the jug would have to be empty at some
Right.
point, right? So, you have those little thoughts, but that's what they say. And,
Hmm.
have these wavy lines, but, that could be waves in the water.
Right.
But of course, it's not a water sign. It's an air sign. It's the fixed air. So fixed means it always seems to be steady. Each of the elements has a quality of I begin it, it's fixed, and then I start changing.
Right.
The fixed air, what could fixed air be? What comes to us on air? What is it that we don't see? We don't see the energy of life. We don't see the cosmic consciousness. We are in it. We're bathing in it all the time. And that is what is unending. That is what's being poured in to, for us in
Mhm.
that sense. And, I found that everything I did pretty much came from the unseen. I mean, I was
Mhm.
not attracted to herbs, which is very earthy.
Yeah, me too.
The hills are alive in our area
Mhm.
with the herbal priestesses. They're really
Right.
in their gardens. And I went into aromatherapy. Well, what is aroma? Aroma comes unseen.
Air.
It's unseen.
Hmm.
It goes in, it changes to an electrical charge, Aquarius, before it goes into the brain. I mean, you can't inhale the essential oil unless it changes to a gas first.
Right.
So this is what attracted me. Reiki attracted me, astrology, unseen realm.
Hmm.
So I didn't realize how air, I mean, I know I can talk forever, which is also very air. And I can think too much, which is also air.
Hmm.
But it really made it very clear to me. And I really loved her guide also.
Hmm. So that's just a place where you can go ahead and read and learn more. Now, you have some Wiccan training in there, and do you feel a little bit? Do you feel that they use the same tools and energy in the 5th century, or did you base it on your own knowledge or experiences? You know, like you have the knife where you're cutting into reality, things like that.
Okay. I took what I was told
Mm-hmm.
and I researched later.
Right.
Like when she does a work with a mirror,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that was
I'm like,
another
I try to
example.
find out if they have, but they did have them. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't have them like we do in our
Right.
rooms
And they were small. Yeah.
right. And they also had knives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in what age are we in? The Iron Age, the Bronze Age, you know, it's not, you know, one of the things I love right now is how the archaeologists are finding things that are in the BC, you know,
Right.
that are the most beautiful, intricately designed jewels and
I know.
things like that. And we just think that
It's so different from what we've been taught to believe for that time period. It's
yeah,
like we've really been given the wrong information about different time periods in the world.
yes, we have been. And I think that's one of the reasons. And I was told that this was the right time for the book, even
Hmm.
though I got it in 1999, you know, it wasn't ready yet, you know, because it had to wait for some of the power of the church and, you know, banning books and stuff, which unfortunately we may be seeing now, but I don't
I
think it
know.
will work. But, you know, they were able to contain the minds of
Yeah,
people. And, you know, in this awakening, you're awakening what you already know inside.
right. Because that's very much what you're talking about is probably channeling from your past life and then channeling from something that was geographical.
And, you know, I mean, I think also we talk about, you know, healing our wounds a lot. And I mean, we didn't talk about that when I was younger, or I would have been healed sooner. But what happens in reading this book, I think, is a healing of the thought that I believed in, which made me not study Celtic stuff. I was afraid of because they were all evil witches, negative imagery. My mother was a Baptist. I mean, I didn't, you know, I mean, it was just like, I don't go there. I'm going to go to
Right.
Native Americans, but I don't go there. So I think healing your ancestral wound and reclaiming the power of the feminine when the equality of the feminine was there is a great thing to do now.
Well, so many of us were priestesses and were either killed for being priestesses or you were a priestess of a tree and they cut down your tree. You know, whatever it was, you were an herbalist and they said you were a witch because you could heal people with herbs. I think there's a ton of that as far as being a woman.
Yes. So being able to see the life of the time, and not just her, but her mother,
Her friends.
her friends, you know, it's very, I have people say this, and I feel that way too. Sometimes I reread the books just to be there.
Hmm.
You know, they say, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end because that was nourishing
Right.
life then.
Yeah, and you were outside and your body was healthy from fresh food and water for the most part. And
Yes.
the earth was more alive, I believe, before we put so much concrete on it.
Well, you know how she describes it. When she first starts, she says, if now you think it lush and green, imagine a time when the earth was grown from birthing another seed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was,
Well, that's a really important thing for us to imagine because personally, I think awakening is a lot more than what goes on with your mind or even your heart. It's our bodies and it's the earth herself. And that concept I thought was very strong in your first book.
yes. I think that is something, you know, I remember when they did the Olympics in England, and at first they showed the Glastonbury tour and everybody was happy and it was green and everything. And then they're very proud of the fact that they got rid of all that and had the buildings with the smoke coming out and the guy with the money and the cigar. And I was crying.
Yeah.
I was literally crying through that.
Yeah, it's time for us to change our concept of what we think is good and bad.
Yes, very much
Yeah.
so.
But the book should help people with that. There's a tremendous amount too that you can learn from reading it. And I wanted to ask, is there one particular idea, thought, or concept that you'd like for your readers to associate with the book? What would that be?
Well, first, I would like to tell you that the books are called the Revealing the Druid Legacy series, and they're on Amazon. And the first is The Last Priestess, and the second is The Priestess of the Realms, and then The Priestess of the Prophecy. So what you can really get from this is you can get tools if you want to use the tools. They're not being hidden from you for the purpose of using them. And one of the things that I am very involved with myself is weather. You know, when I feel that you're in a place and that place is yours to be the guardian, that's where you should be the guardian. So if you need rain, you are taught how to call the rain. If you need to tone something down, you're taught how to do that. And I think that I've done this many times, and it's very effective. So instead of being helpless at the mercy of the natural forces that are around us, reading these books can give you the ability to feel like I have something I can contribute and I can do.
Well, the weather is super important. It's cool right now where you and I live, but earlier it was not. It was like living in a frying pan. So I'm sure you did the same thing. We saw things cooling off and rain coming. And while I'm not going to say, oh, go move that storm around that's in the Caribbean,
Absolutely.
what I am going to say is it's fine for you to see about 10 or 15 miles around you having perfect weather for you. It's even more helpful to see the plants growing, to see baby animals and birds growing, and to have a sense of harmony about it. You can't go wrong if that's what you want to manifest.
Right. And it's very clear in the teaching that you're not supposed to send anything anywhere. It's that you
Yeah.
speak to the elements. That's what you do.
Yeah, the one time we had a hurricane in North Georgia, I must have seen 300 people on Facebook saying, let's move the storm. They moved it, they called it to them.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it's negative karma to
But,
wish it on anywhere else.
but what you can do is see the people that you love as being protected.
You can see protection, and you can literally shift the energy downward where you are. I think, in fact, people were asking me to, say prayers for the fires in California. And I said, we need to start teaching people how to pray for rain.
Right.
It's just, see, I mean, I really would love to get into it. Maybe you and I could do something.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Okay, so we're almost at the end now. Tell our listeners the names of your books again on Amazon. The Last Priestess, and you tell me the other two.
Yes, The Last Priestess, and the second book is Priestess of the Realms. The realms are the elemental realms. And then Priestess of the Prophecy, because she has a mission and there's a prophecy involved in it, and she's doing it.
But we've left the third book alone, so it can be a mystery for you when you get to that one.
Mystery.
Yeah.
Yes.
So pick up the books and immerse yourself in the mysteries, read about the elementals, and learn how to use that energy in your life. And thank you, Shellie, so much for being with us. For my listeners, you can sign up for my biweekly newsletter on my website, onetrueself.com, and receive tips about the energetic weather, developing with spiritual work. Sometimes I write about manifestation, sometimes I write about vibrations. And I also I'm trying to do a monthly free talk, so that's something you can tune into. If you have a question, you can reach me at my email, ONE, trueself, gmail.com. And thank you so much, Shellie, for being with us. And thank you, listeners. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.